ask yourself what brings you the most joy in marketing. And I know some people are like, wait, there's joy in marketing, but there can be. Are you someone that likes to do like the live little videos? Do you like to set up the pretty vignettes? Are you more comfortable talking with people face to face and pitching live? That will help kind of guide you to maybe where to begin. And then from there, again, try to challenge yourself to master whatever that is. There are lots of great resources and books out there. Also connect with other authors. If you see someone doing well, reach out to them. Most authors, thankfully this is the case, most authors are very, very nice, and they will be happy to give you some tips or tricks or even go above and beyond and give a phone call. But reach out to other authors. Don't really bite.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pint and Portal Author Podcast. I am your host, Herman Steuernagel. I'm very excited today for my guest, Katharine Wibell. Katharine, as you'll hear today, is an author who has been publishing for about 10 years. And today we're talking about her marketing strategy, which is really building pieces from a few different pies, essentially, in creating her author platform. It is a fun conversation. We talk a little bit about everything today, but you'll get to see a bit about how you can start to structure those pieces in building your own marketing platform and strategy, so that you're not relying necessarily on only one either platform or market to determine your author career. We have a really fun conversation. I know you're going to get something out of it. So check it out and be sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you're listening on another podcasting platform, please check out the YouTube channel as well. Hit the subscribe button there. Hit the follow button on whatever podcast app you choose. It really helps me reach more authors like yourself who are trying to build their author career, and that is essentially what I'm trying to do. But the more subscribers we have, the more that YouTube realizes that people are enjoying the content and pushes it to even more authors and those who might get value out of the content. So thank you again for being here. We're going to jump straight into the interview today. Well, welcome everyone once again to the Pint and Portal Author Podcast. I'm super excited for today's guest. I've got Katharine Wibell here today. I'm very happy to have you here today, Katharine. For those of our listeners who may not know who you are, can you just give us a brief bio and introduction to who you are and what it is that you write?
Well, like you said, my name is Katharine E. Wibell. I am a high fantasy author, and I write a variety of different series for different age groups, from young adult to new adult to the adult side of things. They range from the light and bright questing isekai, quest forward series, all the way to the dark, almost grimdark side with some of my Nordic retellings based on myth. So I love a little bit of everything, and I always have multiple projects in the works.
Yeah, and I don't think I realized how extensive your backlist is. I was having a look at your website. I've seen a lot of your, I know you have a multiverse fantasy series, which of course interests me a lot. But then I was looking at your website, and you've got, how many books do you have published?
I have 9 books published, but I have a series that's a novella series, and there are 16 of those, and those can come independently or in various omnibuses. And I'm also recently had a short story in an anthology, so I can add that to my list as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, 9 novellas definitely counts. So you don't have to subtract, or 16 novellas, I'm sorry. So yeah, I mean, that's like 25-ish published works, which is incredible.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. So how long have you been, I guess, first writing for? Which is always a separate question from how long have you been publishing for?
Well, I feel like when you ask how long have you been writing for, that's usually a trick question for a lot of authors, because some of us have the similar idea as I do, where at least for me, I've always told stories. So the idea of developing characters, backstories, these creative worlds has just been something that's come natural to me ever since I was a young kid, coming up with like our imaginary play with my sister. And actually some of those worlds and those characters ended up developing that multiverse reflected in my YA series, The Jed Chronicles. So, the inspiration has come since I was like 7 or 8 years old. Right. But as far as taking writing seriously, it was right around when I was heading into college that I came up with an idea for a different story that would end up becoming my first book. And I just couldn't get it out of my head. I wrote a few chapters. Of course, college does what college does and gets, a 4-year hiatus before getting back. But pretty much right after graduation, I was, trying to scrape up some time to write that first book in between, figuring out jobs and everything for a little
Right.
while. So I've been writing for a while, but publishing my first book, As Far as Claws, the one in the blue, that one's been published since 2016. So I've hit my 10-year
Wow.
mark right now.
10 years. Well, congratulations. That is a landmark date for sure. There's a lot of, indie authors that don't make it to 10 years, that give up, long before they hit that mark. So congratulations on that. That is a benchmark. So now did you go to obviously if you were going to university, were you expecting to become, have writing as your career when you finished? Was that the goal?
Here's another weird answer for you. I
Yeah.
always knew I was just very confident kid, and I was always with the headspace at some point I was going to publish a book. I actually went to college for 2 different things. I double majored. One was in fine art because my other job I paint pets and I'll do animal portraiture, but the other was animal psychology since I wanted to be Dr. Doolittle. So I wanted to talk to the
Wow.
animals. And so those were my 2 degrees in undergrad.
That's so much fun. Yeah. So not writing in either one of those
Nope.
necessarily. Yeah. So what was it that I guess, 2016, obviously you had these story ideas. Was your goal in 2016 to be writing full time, or was it just to kind of get the story that you had out to the world?
I knew I had multiple passions. And so even to this day, I kind of cobble between writing as well as my animal portraits. And so early on, I was more focused on the painting because it was easier at the time to be able to show work, get into galleries, spaces like that. And when it came to independent publishing, I was kind of learning as I go and trying to figure things out and stumbling and making all the mistakes along the way. So it took me a little while to get my feet underneath me. And I do think that the unfortunate but fortunate aspect of that 2020 COVID year, when all the galleries and everything were shutting down, it really forced me to focus a lot more time to figuring out the writing business side of things and how to market a little better. And that has helped me kind of shift. So now writing is becoming more of my primary and the art is kind of like the backup job.
Yeah, for sure. So what was it during that time during COVID that you obviously, I mean, necessity is a part of it, but what shifted? What changes that you made that made an impact in how you run your author business? What did that look like at that time? What did you try that seemed to start moving things in the direction you wanted them to go?
There was a little bit of a number of things. And part of that was I finally found some good resources for independent publishing. There's a 20 books to 50K group on Facebook. And that was kind of around the time when I had heard about it. And so I was kind of diving into all that content. And if anybody has not checked that platform, that website or group on Facebook, it has a lot of content and information for the marketing and advertising side of someone who's pursuing a writing career. Also, at that time, I had hired for a little bit a publishing assistant to try to help me figure out and navigate and learn better marketing on other social media. And so I rebranded my Facebook because I made the mistake where my first Facebook page was named after my initial series. And what
Right.
happens when you start writing your second series? Well, I went through a whole rebranding. So I created a new page and tried to rebuild it from scratch. Started focusing more time on things like Instagram. And then a few years later, I don't remember if it was 21, 22, I started getting onto book talks, so the TikTok side of things. And that for me and the way I like to relate to readers allowed me to meet not only the readership, but other authors who have then helped me launch my career to next level. So it's been a
Yeah.
process.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you touched on a lot of different things that I think felt like little things at the time, but I think they relate to, really big picture things that you learned during kind of those initial years. I want to start with the Facebook page name because I think a lot of authors, they write their first book and they're like, this is the best thing I have ever done. I will never do anything better than this. So this is going to be what I build my entire brand on.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, sometimes not the case, but usually that first book isn't the one that hits.
Well, as you were mentioning, like when you're a new author or a baby author, as some of us say, you're so excited, you're getting there. It takes so much effort and time to write the book, edit the book, figuring out how to publish it, be it querying or, and you get to that stage where it's becoming a reality. So you're very excited about it and you want everybody to know the book. And it does make sense a little bit initially of let's put the book's name or the series name up in front. But in the long term, when you're trying to understand that as a writer, a goal I would suggest for everybody to have, it makes sense when you say it, is that every book you write should be better than the last. Challenge yourself to always grow and improve, which means your first book will theoretically be your worst book. And the second one will be better, but it may still not be the best book you ever, because you want to challenge yourself to continue to improve. And unless you're a person who just wants to write one book, then make it the best you can. But yeah, it's one of those mentalities. You kind of have to start thinking about that long game and where do you want to see yourself? And then how do you market that? So marketing yourself as the author, as your name brand versus a book or a series will help you, especially if you kind of like me and jump around between different genres and everything. I understand the whole pen names thing is a totally different topic, but figuring out how you want to represent yourself as an author is probably the way to go. And then
Hmm.
use that across all your platforms and try to keep your branding the same, be it your name, your logo, color schemes even, and that helps a lot.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's interesting as you kind of grow as an author to kind of realize, hey, that was, not maybe the best idea, initially, but you're able to learn from that as you grow and as your career continues. But you did touch on something else super interesting for me. You write multiple genres and subgenres, which we're told we're not supposed to do as indie authors. You're supposed to find your lane and stick in it. But here you are 10 years later, you're making it work. And so, how have you done that in a way that both you can capture as your brand under your author name and still bring in readerships that will, follow you along? Or do they follow you along? Like, how has that looked for you?
Well, what I have done and what probably the more recommendable thing are two different things. Because again, I learn as I go, and I feel like I know now that I've have the right contacts and the right information and platforms and places to go and do the research than I did initially. But I've done things the wrong way, almost guaranteed the first time for everything. So when it goes to this, the best approach, talking to a lot of authors over the years, it sounds like the best approach is work on one genre, one niche, make yourself known, and then you can branch out. Now, I did not do that. I always like the shiny new thing. So as soon as I finish a project, I'm already working on something else. And I am not an author who stays in my same universe. I develop multiple universes or multiple multiverses. So it's always very different for me. The downside of doing that, to be honest, is you will lose a lot of readers in the sense of they won't jump. Readers like what they like. And if you're not in that niche, and unless you make yourself one of their like most favorite authors, the Insta buys and all that kind of stuff, but you have to understand that every time you jump to a new subgenre or age bracket, you're going to pretty much start from scratch again. So be prepared if that is what you want to do. But I'm
Yeah.
determined.
Yeah, it's funny as as authors, I find that for us, I think a lot more authors will read anything. If we
Mhm.
find an author we like, we'll read anything that they put out, whether that's, and I mean, usually it's within a realm of genres. People don't usually jump from thrillers to romance or, or whatever. But readers don't seem to be that way. And I think, a lot of authors struggle to, realize that no, if I want the same readers to follow me all along, I probably need to stick to one kind of subgenre. That doesn't mean that I can't bring readers across subgenres, but there's probably going to be different groups of readers for every subgenre that you're writing in, that don't
Yeah. And
necessarily cross over, right?
And it's something to be aware also that if you do decide to jump between totally different genres or ages, the platforms you need to be marketing on are going to be different because you have, I was going to say for YA, unfortunately, it's really a hard one to market to because you're marketing to the parents or the grandparents of the kids that are in that versus the actual YA age bracket. If you want someone that likes a little more romantasy, platforms like Book Talk are a little more free because they allow you to do different marketing versus finding something just on Amazon because Amazon's very strict on how a romance or romantasy reader can or market themselves. So trying to find the right readership, it becomes tricky. You have to do a lot more research and know your market.
Yeah. So how do you approach that then? Because now I'm interested because I know I've seen you probably primarily on TikTok. I think that's probably
That's my
where
home.
a lot of people have found you. But do you use a different approach for different books on different platforms? or how do you kind of manage the marketing, having said that?
I like to cross promote on a lot of platforms. So I try to have I try to be on a number of socials. I'm on, again, Facebook, Instagram. I've done some things like Lemonade, which hasn't really worked well for me, but again, Book Talk. I've just recently gone Thread. So I have a large number that I have been on and I try, and some of them I focus a little bit more. One of the ways I can try to balance that out is if I'm creating content of something like Book Talk on TikTok, then I will kind of cross promote it on some of these other platforms rather than making something specific for each of those platforms. But,
Okay.
and here's the but, there are other people who like to say the opposite, that say if you really want to get in and master that marketing, you might want to consider tweaking things to the different kind of platforms and what those platform readerships expect. I have limited time in the day, so I kind of cross promote and hope for the best. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it, but that's the way I'm doing it.
Well, that's just it, right? We all have
Mhm.
limited time and we can only do so many so many things. No matter how hard we try, something always, kind of has to give. But have you found when you look at your numbers and the engagement on the different platforms, that certain books are, perform better on certain platforms than others?
Yeah, and I've come to realize, and this is also, I think, one of the reasons why I have been making a shift to write more to an adult audience. It's easier to market for an adult audience, in general, my personal opinion and my personal experience. And so, writing books that are meant for adults, it's easier because you're marketing directly to the people who are buying it, and also people, at least the ones that how I've kind of built my more mature works. They are a little darker, a little grittier, and it captivates a certain type of reader. The same way, on the opposite, like if you write cozy, you're marketing for a certain audience and you figure out, the right words and everything for that. But yeah, it's trying to figure out, again, going back, you got to try things and see. But for me, the ones that are marketed for more mature, more adult audiences seem to always do better than the younger ones. Is that
Right, right. Now, do you find it easy with your books? Because your books are all a flavor of fantasy in some way.
yes? So far, yes.
Do you find it easy to talk to kind of the same audience about the different subgenres? Let's leave YA on the side for now, I guess. But
Mhm.
your different, more adult books. Do you find that easier to kind of cross promote them a little bit more, or do you find that people are so niche down in their reading that you're really only talking to a specific group with each series?
My experience is, um, and it's a little bit of unfortunate truth, but yes, I do think that it's speaking to that a specific reader for that specific book. And so certain things hit stronger for certain people, and again, certain keywords or hashtags and reach people. And you just have to kind of, again, learn and play around and figure out what works for you in your particular book. But my most popular series is my novella series, which was my Viking fantasy. So a retelling of Nordic myth. And a lot of people are, at least at the time when I started working and promoting that one, were really fascinated. And of course, there were a lot of things coming out at the time. The Vikings Valhalla was coming back, and a bunch of other shows and movies that pertain to the Viking era. So it was nice to hit that market, but people are kind of fascinated with that. But also, I think one of those tricks is finding something that people can relate to and kind of compare it to. So when people talk about those comparisons and comps, it becomes really important, because for that one, it's like, well, if you like Vikings Valhalla and if you like The Last Kingdom and you like this vibe, or if you like that, you can put it together. People are like, yes, that's for me. And it's
Yeah.
trying to just learn how to market, again, your book the best you can.
Right. Yeah. Finding the right hook for the right audience really is
Yes.
what you're doing. So, and I know we're bouncing all over the place, but this is, you're telling me so many interesting things, and I just want to pull at all of these threads. But so that that your novella series, was that remind me, that wasn't your first series,
No,
like
that
that came.
actually technically was the third one that I started, but I published multiple series simultaneously. I could publish 4 of those novellas a year along with one of my YA, so I was able to balance 2 series. Now the Viking series is complete, and so I'm still working on my YA one and other works at this moment in time. But yeah, so that's
Yeah.
technically my third one that I
Okay.
started.
Okay. Yeah. So, and that's your novella series. It's funny because I've had a lot of authors tell me that, novellas don't really sell that well, but obviously you have seemed to make it work. If that's your most popular series. What do you think do you think that's just because of how you've marketed it? Do you think that, because I know you've combined those into box sets, in a few different ways too. Do you think that there is validity to saying that novellas aren't marketable, or, is it just a matter of finding the right audience for them?
I think it's how you market it. And yes, there are definitely going to be people who want, and I am one of those readers. I like a big book. I like a meaty book. And that's one of the reasons why, as soon as I had enough novellas, I bundled them in sets of 4 and I waited to print them because I don't want the little teeny slivers on the shelf. I want something that at least has a decent spine to it. And there are definitely people who like it because it's like you get your bang out of buck, you get 4 in 1 and you get a good taste. On the other hand, if you're trying to market just novellas independent, using words like, these can be your quick, palate cleansers. They're a quick read between your big chunky books. And some people really like that. They want to enjoy something a little bit, these kind of like little bites, these little tasters of something.
Right.
And you can swing it both ways and find readers that are appealed to the whole fact that this is quick, short, sweet, and you can kind of read it. Or you can bundle it in the bigger stuff and say, hey, you 4 in 1, and people are intrigued too. So I think it's I've seen a lot more other authors moving to writing novella series or series where novellas are kind of fit in between some of the bigger books. So I do see more and more novellas popping up right now.
Yeah, and it gives you a few different ways that you can use that IP as well, right? Because like you said, you're targeting to people who want the quick short read. Maybe it's December and they've got, 10 more books on their goal for, their Goodreads challenge or whatever that looks like, right? So that's an easy plug. You want a quick read, pick up a novella. But you've also put together box sets for someone who wants a longer read. And are your box sets 3 or 4? I can't remember off the top of
So
my
my
head here.
standard ones are 4, and this is where it gets complicated. Standard ones the ones you can find on pretty much Amazon and in print and everything, and you will see them in sets of 4. But I do have special editions, the ones behind me, that are bundled in sets of 8. And I did that because I wanted to have incorporated extra things in some of those editions, including like art and sprayed edges and stuff like that. So I really wanted them to stand out versus my 4 sets of 4. So I have them different ways. And that's where the marketing again gets a little convoluted. If I had thought in advance, I probably would have split it 8 and 8 versus 4 sets of 4, but you live and learn.
That's right. I mean, so much of this is just trying to figure out what actually works, and that's the whole reason I'm doing this podcast is just find out what has been working for other authors, because every author you talk to tells you something different.
Mm-hmm.
Which is so there's no formula that you do this and this is how you build an author career. Everybody has kind of carved their own path to figure out what has worked for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always interested when someone has taken a different approach, like writing 16 novellas, turning that into multiple pieces that they can work and repurpose to different audiences. I mean, that to me is a brilliant way to look at it, because you're reaching people that maybe wouldn't pick up just one book or one novella, or they might not have picked up one larger book, but they're willing to pick up a novella. So you're really reaching different facets of your audience, which is really cool.
Yes. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. There are so many different readers out there, and depending on how niche or how wide you want to go, the trick is trying to find them. And I feel like there's definitely books for everybody, just not everybody likes each book. So having, a variety, there is some perks to it. It's maybe a marketing nightmare, but once you find that readership, it does give you a wider net.
Right, for sure. So, now after 10 years of publishing, have you found that you've settled into, a path that has worked for you as far as what your marketing looks like, what your writing looks like, who you're targeting, whether that's, specific, like is it TikTok that's working for you? What now 10 years after have you kind of settled into as kind of working for your author career? Or is it just a little piece of every pie?
It almost is a little piece of every pie. And that is in part when you're doing some of these social media platforms that are maybe like on the free side without trying to focus in on the ads. Algorithms change all the time. People and populations change all the time. The social media platforms change all the time. And so relying on any of those, it may not be the best bet long term, rather than having at least a couple out there. I'm not saying you have to be on everyone. We have only limited time of the day, but having at least a couple of them to kind of focus on. And there's so many ways that people can be found and market. We have crowdfunding campaigns that launch, and there are definitely readers that now almost only check out those platforms for books. One of the new endeavors that I'm hoping to get into towards the end of August is I'm going to put a story on Royal Road. and see how I can draw up interest that way, which is something very, very different for me. So there are so many
Yeah.
different ways for authors to figure out how to funnel their books out, get the word out, spread, your name, and hopefully find long-term readers because of it.
Sure. Yeah. I like that. And that's kind of the approach that I try to take as well, because I see a lot of authors who freak out that, maybe their KDP sales are down this month, or, they see an Ingram Spark report, and it's, a $50 a month, or whatever that looks like. But in my mind, is if you have a little bit coming from each of these different channels, then it all adds up and you're not over relying on one platform to pay the bills, essentially, right? And that's the way I kind of look at it. And then the same goes with something like TikTok. TikTok used to be my biggest audience finder, and it's like almost dried up completely for me now. I don't know if I don't know if I
Well,
sell any
the
books through
algorithms
TikTok
have
anymore.
definitely changed. Yeah, the algorithms
Yeah.
definitely changed with the sale of it, and it
Hmm.
has quieted down for me as well, and I'm very happy for the people I have because it's still probably one of my biggest community focuses that I have, but it's become harder to reach new people through that. So that's why I always like to try new things. And we haven't mentioned it, so I'll mention it too. Another great way, again, depending on how comfortable you are with face to face, but doing face to face events are a great way to get in front of fans and get your name out there, be it being panels on at events or just selling at events and tabling. But there are lots of different ways for you to be found. And I know authors that make each of them work. It just depends on, again, you, your niche, and what works again for you in your work.
Yeah, 100%. And I know there's still authors, just because TikTok isn't working as well for me right now. I know authors who are still killing it on TikTok, and they just because the algorithm has changed, they've made it work in their own way, whether that's through, live events, or through, any of those other means that they have. For some reason, it works for them, and that's great. In-person sales are working for other people. So everyone kind of it's a great problem to have, but it also is still a problem to have, where there's
Yes.
so much that you can do that you it's nice because you can find something that you like doing to market your books, but there's also just so much, and you don't know where your audience is necessarily until you're in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error and figuring out and also finding balance because that's also very important because thankfully I've not had a huge burnout moment, but there are a lot of authors in because there are so many things you feel like you need to do. You try to do them all and you hit that burnout and everybody's, threshold for that is different. So again, you have to be honest with yourself if you can only post twice a week on a platform or, 5 times a day on different things and do events and do the crowdfunding and, it depends
Yeah.
on you and where your energy level is as well.
100%. Yeah, you can always tell when I'm having a busy month or week because I'm not posting on social media that week, because I just like, or it's just a repost of something else that I did earlier on. But
Yeah,
you've got to kind of give yourself some grace in some of those places, because you cannot do everything that you could possibly do. So
that's true.
yeah, but speaking of trying new things, you did mention it, but you are running a Kickstarter
Yeah.
is this the first time you're running a Kickstarter, or have you run them
I've
before?
run several in the past. This is technically 3, 4, 5. This is my fifth one.
Okay.
And each one, it's interesting because it's another, if you think of it this way, it's another kind of platform to play with. They have their own algorithms, they have their own particular group that just hubs there. You can pull people into it and expand upon it, but it is a pocket of readership that when you don't use crowdfunding, you miss all those people. And what they want is a little different than you find it elsewhere. A lot of them do like the special editions and the fancier books, but they're still a great place to help launch books in general, series. I've seen a lot of anthologies getting really popular that way as well. And right now, I am running a campaign for my upcoming Greek myth book, which I have my examples here. These are my proofs.
Ooh,
So, what will
nice.
be the standard book cover? This is the one printed through Amazon. So, Amazon has that little band, which won't be there, the final version, and that'll be more the standard pop book, but the special edition is the one that has sprayed edges. It has the colored end papers and maps and art.
Nice. Oh, cool.
So it's a really nice book, and it's based on the generation of Greek heroes, or a generation Greek heroes, one generation prior to the Trojan War. So the father of Odysseus and Achilles and Heracles, Jason and the Argonauts and Orpheus. And then my main character is Atalanta, who arguably is the only female hero in Greek myth. So her story actually does, in Greek myth, tie her to pretty much all the big name heroes that were alive during her time frame.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So this is your so this book isn't released yet to the market. You're doing the Kickstarter first. Is that how you ran your previous Kickstarters? Did you do the special edition first?
So I did 3 for my YA series, and that was just to help launch the standard book. Being YA, again, it's harder to market, so they always covered what I wanted to do, but I never also had like lofty goals. The one I ran towards last year was for special edition of my Viking series. That series was already published, but I really wanted the big special editions with the fancy dust covers and, I have iridescent foiling on those and beautiful, again, art and ribbon bookmarks and everything. And that one did very well for me. It was my first time I've ever hit a 5-figure Kickstarter. So I was very pleased with that one, but it was for a complete series. So understand that marketing wise, because what I'm doing this time is starting the first book of a duology. So have to get the interest in, have to build the buzz, and then build off from there. So different kind of marketing strategies.
Yeah. So how are you finding that to be then for this round, considering, it is a different point in the book's life?
No, it's gone back to the point where, because it's not a book series that I've promoted much before, because it is brand new and it's the first of a series, the marketing is a little harder this go around than it was with a complete series. And again, I'm still new-ish enough to crowdfunding, so I don't know if that's just a typical thing or if that's just my particular case, since I'm also an author that I love my readers, but I am still a small fry compared to some other authors out there. So, each time you do these kind of things, and Kickstarter, just like all these other platforms, you build a following over time. So the more you do them, the more you can market to them. And then the question is, how many people, as we asked before, will jump from one genre to another? The Nordic one and this one are both myth-based retellings, but one is Vikings and one is Greek. And so some people just want one versus the other. So it's trying to figure out the marketing.
Yeah, and Kickstarter is an interesting platform for that. And I absolutely love Kickstarter. It's kind of the base. I mean, I've got some of my shiny covers behind me here too.
Hey, shiny covers.
Yeah, I mean, so like it has really been the base of what I've been doing to try to build up my own author business here. But I find that Kickstarter backers they tend to be able to switch genres easier, or they tend to be willing to switch genres easier than let's say on Amazon. If you're a Kindle Unlimited person whose books are only in Kindle Unlimited, those readers seem to only want one particular genre and they want to read as much as they can in that subgenre. Whereas Kickstarter, I don't know if it's because they like all of the fancy features or because they like being first to get something, but they seem a little bit more willing to genre hop, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and I think there is a subsection of readers that just want the book trophies. Like, I've talked to some that they buy the pretty book for the shelf display and they won't read it. And that's why you'll see these tiers where people will have both like the hardcover and paperback, because they'll put the book trophy, which will never be opened. They just have it on their shelves or on display, and then the one they'll read because they're, don't want to damage the pretty book. But it is a fascinating thing that it is almost a very different breed of reader that goes for the shiny books, the special editions, the deluxe stuff.
Right. It is. Yeah. And, and I'm that type of person. I don't want to read the fancy books. I'll put them on my shelf. And that's why I have to restrain myself a lot from Kickstarters on my own, because they, I'll buy them, but I don't want to read them because they're so nice. I'll buy the fancy book, and then I'll buy a paperback book to read, or the ebook to actually read, because, in my mind, they're special editions. Like, you can't get them just anywhere. So I want to keep them nice.
I wish I was that kind. Or maybe it's the opposite. Who knows? But like, if I have a special edition, I'm going to read it. Though I will be very careful with it. I'll be like, oh, no, turn the page very slowly. But I will read my special editions. So I have no problem if you want to buy both the ebook and the audiobook and the paperback and the hardcover, go for it.
Of course, right? Of course. Yeah, I think, the first Kickstarter I ran, it just threw me off guard because it just is not my personality type that I'm
Mhm.
going to, crack open the special edition to read. Oh, you read. My sister was like the first one. She's like, I'm going to read this on the plane. I'm like, you're going to bring that on the plane? What are you It goes on your shelf. She's like, what? I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. You can read it. But
It's
it's
so
just, yeah,
pretty.
I know exactly. But yes, but I mean, everyone collects books in the manner and the format and
Uh-huh.
the channel that they collect them for a particular reason, whether that's, they want an audiobook, an ebook, and a special edition book for, wherever they are, or they just want, one of those formats. So that's part of the thing that makes this, it's flexible for authors to find different platforms and channels where they feel like they can and want to reach the readers. But it
Mhm.
also is what makes it challenging because there's so many different ways to reach readers as well.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I know it's overwhelming for a lot of new authors because they hear all these things and maybe feel that little bit of panic on like, well, what do I do first? And there's no one answer. It's how, you pick one or two things, focus on them, and then expand and try other things. Don't try it all at once out the gate. That would be my one warning. Not to say you can't try them all or do them all, but start and build versus trying to go wide with everything first, because there's a
Yeah,
lot of learning, there's a lot of things to do, figuring out, failing with, and you don't want, again, that burnout or overwhelming sensations.
100%. Because that is so easy to do. But, I think that is, in my mind, a good strategy. Start with one thing, get a feel for it before moving on to the next, shiny thing that you can try. Because, there's just because something doesn't work for you right away doesn't mean it's not something that won't work for you either, right? Like, is that something that you have, found in your own marketing? Like, is there something that maybe didn't feel was working initially that has changed over time, or what has that looked like for you?
Well, I mean, going back to what the Kickstarter topic is trying to figure out that market. I know a lot of people have fantastic successes. I know that's possible, and I've, as the last one I ran for the Guardian speaker, did well. And so it's one of those things that I'm challenging myself to master it at some point, figure it out. I haven't done that quite yet, but figure it out. But there's definitely certain things and certain, again, the genres and the readerships that are there looking for books that I feel like there's a power there that I don't want to harness. I'm close, but I'm not exactly where I want to be right there. So that's one of my personal goals. But yeah,
Mhm.
in the past, it's just because something doesn't work. You may need to just try a slightly different approach with it, practice, improve, read information about like the marketing of that platform, talk to authors who do well, and that can help you improve. There's no guarantees. If anybody gives you a guarantee, don't believe them. There are
For
no
sure.
guarantees because things change dramatically and there are so many differences and luck does play an effect sometimes. But yeah, don't give up on something just because it doesn't work the first time.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. And I think overall good advice. And I think, in that spirit, looking back over the last 10 years and, someone who, let's say, is at a point where they have a number of books out, they're trying to figure out what's going to work for them and whether it is or kind of is, or, what's something that you would recommend, let's even say to yourself, a number of years ago, or, someone in that position where they're just trying to build an author career and nothing seems to be sticking. What's kind of your advice for them?
Ooh, okay. Building an author career and nothing seems to be sticking. I mean, in that case, what I would do would ask yourself what brings you the most joy in marketing. And I know some people are like, wait, there's joy in marketing, but there can be. Are you someone that likes to do like the live little videos? Do you like to set up the pretty vignettes? Are you more comfortable talking with people face to face and pitching live? That will help kind of guide you to maybe where to begin. And then from there, again, try to challenge yourself to master whatever that is. And as I just said, research, check out some of these kind of informative platforms like there's Novel Gains, there's 20 books to 50K, both on Facebook. There are lots of great resources and books out there. Also connect with other authors. If you see someone doing well, reach out to them. Most authors, thankfully, this is the case. Most authors are very, very nice and they will be happy to give you some tips or tricks, or even go above and beyond and give a phone call. I have one author going to do that for me again, since I want to get onto Royal Road, and he does very well on that. He's going to do a one-on-one session with me in another week or so, just to try to make sure I know what I need to know before I launch that. But reach out to other authors. We don't really bite hard, at least not hard.
Exactly. Yeah, when especially starting out, I think more so than anything, there's this sense that other authors are untouchable or unreachable, that I don't want to bother them. And it's amazing how willing authors are to talk about what they're doing. Even if it's not going well, they're willing to share, like, I'm trying this, but it's not working.
Yeah.
Or I'm trying this and it is kind of working. And, it's amazing how open and connected the author community is. And I love that advice. And, people, almost everyone who comes on here says some version of that. Like, I'm, connect with other authors in the author community, because it really is kind of a small world. It seems like there's so many authors out there, but there is really a small network once you get kind of into it, that everyone kind of knows each other, which is a lot of fun.
That is definitely true, because it took me a little while to get to the right places to realize that, but has been almost shocking to me, and it's a great shock, that the authors that you see on the social media platforms and the ones that are doing well on crowdfunding, these, the names you see in the books you see, they're at a lot of these, the big events, and we all start actually knowing each other somehow, some way. And you're like, so-and-so, and you're like, oh yeah, I talked to this person or saw this person or met this person here, there, wherever, but it is a very large, small community.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do think that's probably a good place for us to wrap this up. I will include links to your Kickstarter in the description below, as well as links to your website. But, to close us out, is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners?
Well, I would say, I know if you're starting out there, you don't know what you don't know, and that's one of the hardest parts. But one of the best things you can do, especially if you're someone who maybe doesn't even have a book out there, is pick a platform or two and just start talking about your writing journey. You don't have to necessarily spoil the project, but, talk about the similar books or what you like to read. Get your face out there, or, if you're doing a faceless content, something out there with your name, so you're marketing yourself before your book ever releases. So the day your book releases, people already know about you, know about your book, and it'll help you with your launches that much better. So market before you publish.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great advice. I know it's super hard for those, I know there's like newbie authors out there who are working on their first book that are terrified of that advice, but it's a good time, because nobody knows, nobody's read your stuff yet. Nobody knows who you are yet. So you're not going to be perfect right away at these platforms, but to get those reps in kind of before your book comes out is great, because you work out those bugs and you figure out what works and what doesn't, even before, you have a book to sell. So, but yeah, fantastic advice. And again, it's been said on this show a lot. If people don't know who you are, they're not going to buy your book. They have to be able to find you, right? Yeah.
Wibell. So check out me and my website, KatharineWibellBooks.com. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katharine. This has been so much fun, and I hope we get to chat again soon.
Yes.
Great. Take care.
Bye.